now I see something. And that's the word bleepo. When it says he looked up, which Aaron picked up on, it's a combination of bleepo and ana. So it's one word, anableepo, which means to look up. But it has even more significance. The anableepo, when it says he looked up, can also mean that he recovered his sight. So Jesus says, do you bleepo? Do you see anything? And it says he looked up. So in other words, he's had a certain recovery of sight as he looks up. As Aaron said, his head must have been down if he was looking up. And that's exactly true. That's what the word means, to look up. That his sight was recovered. And he says, I bleepo, I see men. The Greek word is anthropos, where we get anthropology from. Humanity. I see men, I see man, if you would. I see humanity like trees walking. Now, does anybody in here believe that that's the eyesight that Jesus wants us to have towards all the people around us, that we just see them as humanity? They're just people. I hope not. I don't know that he could bear watching television nowadays, the news, when you see the wars and the pain and the suffering and the reports of people being shot in high schools and all kinds of stuff. This guy looks up, and his response, he's answering Jesus. Jesus says, did you bleepo? Did you see anything? And he's saying, yeah, I bleepoed. So there's a response there to Jesus bringing him through stage one. He sees something. Remember where this story started a long time ago in the beginning of Mark 6. Jesus did not do many miracles in his hometown because they said, isn't this Joseph's son? He's only Joseph's son. I see men as trees walking. You see this parallel. Chapters away from each other. Jesus was much more than Joseph's son. And each one of us in this room is more than a tree. Have you ever wondered, and we can't know for sure, I mean we do certain research and stuff like that, but about babies. When a baby is born, have you ever been around a newborn in the first month, let's say, trying to use their eyes, so to speak? I grabbed something offline, not the Twilight Zone again. Oh, you can play that if I really like that. I feel like that half the time. This is what the specialist wrote to a woman who was asking the question about what her baby's going to experience, the development of their eyes and vision and stuff like that. As I'm reading this, see if you can if you hear sort of what the Spirit of the Lord is saying in terms of spiritual development and the way we see. It's fascinating. Your baby can see from birth, but her vision is quite blurry at first. Her sight will develop gradually over her first year. By the time your baby is a year old, she'll see the world almost as well as you do. At birth, your baby's vision is pretty fuzzy, though she can make out light, shapes, and movement. You would have thought I wrote this after reading what we're reading from Mark Whitman. Your baby will turn her eyes towards a window or another source of light. She'll blink in response to sudden bright lights. You may notice your newborn's eyes wandering, as she hasn't yet learned that she can fix both eyes on an object. During your baby's first month, she can focus only about 20 centimeters to 30 centimeters away. That's just far enough to clearly make out the face of the person holding her. If you could hold her close, she'll find your face and expressions fascinating. At 1 month, your baby can't see far, but that doesn't matter, as your face is the most interesting thing to her anyway. And the chances are you'll be staying close to her in the first few weeks. When you cuddle her, make eye contact and give her time to study your features. By the time your baby is 1 or 2 months old, she'll have learned to focus both eyes. This means she can follow the progress of a moving object, and it goes on and on. And it was absolutely fascinating as I was reading that, to think in terms of our own spiritual sight, the way it develops gradually as we grow older and older and move more with Christ in the whole thing. It's a great picture. I couldn't write that. But what it says is Jesus made him look up, and it's a different word for look up now. And this is the real key to the key for me to the passage. This time it's diablepo, which doesn't just mean to look up, but it means to look through, to recover full vision. So after he sees men as trees walking, he touches them a second time, and now he gives them the sight, not to just see men as trees walk, but to actually look into the man and see what he sees in the man. And he sees every man clearly, plainly. Now he sees as Jesus sees. He just doesn't see Jerry. He sees down deep inside Jerry, into her heart, her needs, her desires, her values, everything about her. And Jesus is saying, yes, that's the spiritual insight, that's the spiritual sight that we're striving for. It says he was restored, which is more than seeing. The word in the Greek actually means reconstituted. In other words, this guy was totally restored. He was seeing as a son. He was seeing as Adam originally saw before he went blind in the garden. We talked about this a few weeks ago because there's a lot of theology, and I'm not going to argue with it, theology that, we sinned and God booked. And all I pose to you is that if we sinned and went blind, God could have been standing there all along and we'd never know. Because we couldn't see him, all we could do was hear his voice. And when you look throughout the scriptures and see how important hearing is, faith comes by hearing. By faith we understand. So faith comes by hearing, we believe, we understand, we see. That's what understanding is about. The more we exercise faith, the more we understand. The more we understand, the more we see. How is it you don't understand? Oh, ye of little faith. Look at the Syrophoenician woman who believed that I was more than a Jewish man, I was more than a prophet, I was more than Messiah. I was the Son of God who came to heal all of mankind regardless. And even when we separate ourselves by various religions all over the place, God is still saying, I have come to heal all of my children, to restore all of them. The fourth thing and the last thing, after all the bleepos, what was that? What was it called? What the bleep do I know? What was that? I'll tell you one of the bits that's in there, and then you'll see what I mean. A Japanese guy, I forget his name, Hoshi Makata Pita, something like that. Or something like that. Had a cylinder full of water, and he was able to, whatever he did, however he was able to get a picture of how the water was actually crystallized. When they put the word love on the outside and the beautiful crystal formations, I'm just talking about writing the word love. Other people have actually yelled love or spoken it to the water. Just speak it, love. And the formation of the molecular structure of the water changes into this beautiful, pattern. And if you yell hate at it, or you put the word hate on the glass with the water's in, it forms this very angry looking, crystallized, very, very mean looking molecular structure. So a title like What the Bleep Do I Know is a great title for the actual program, movie, because it's not trying to do anything but encourage us into areas that we really don't understand yet, but strive to understand. Go further with Jesus. Go further. Go further. Go further. He said, follow me. Don't stop. Keep following him. The last point is this. It says he saw everyone clearly, which just sounds like, okay, so he saw everyone clearly. But again, it's the fourth time bleepo is used. It's bleepo, when it says he saw everyone clearly. The word saw, now it doesn't mean just to look in or look through, but to actually discern. He saw, he discerned everyone clearly, which simply means this. Again, I have to use a lot of the Greek words because it doesn't make sense anyway. He went from seeing men, humanity, to every one. In other words, it was no longer just a conglomerate. I walk into Walmart, there's like 1,000 people. Oh, God, are you kidding me? No, I walk into Walmart and I see people. Yes, they're all part of a whole. I recognize that they're like one particle in a group. They're like one part in a body, one member, part of a body. I see the whole, but I see each one. When it says he saw everyone, he saw each one. I think much like you see people, Aaron, where you work. You don't see them as a category. You see them as a person in a world that they didn't ask to be invited into, but that's where they are. So you discern the world that they're in. You jump in far enough to take their hand and try to lead them out to a place of wholeness and health. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely right.
I was hoping so. I'm wrong so often. The last part of this, it really, really touches my heart because it says to me that this guy, he just saw people every day. That's all it was just seeing people. Walking around Roberts, just people. after he's been restored and reconstituted, he sees like Jesus. He sees each and every one. He sees them as a whole, not denying that they're part of a whole, which is the beauty of it. Because see, once we see the whole, we know we're all part of the same thing. And then we see what somebody else is going through. All of a sudden we have this revelation. Actually, if they're going through it, I'm going through it, because we're one. We're part of the same whole. We're all part of the same thing. And yet, all individual in terms of being who we are. All of this leads, and now it may make a little bit more sense to you. I'm sure you have heard this many times, the story where Jesus says, "Who do men say I am?" You've all heard that, heard it preached probably 1,000 times. Well, this is where it occurs. Following this whole thing we've been doing, how many loaves do you have? One loaf, the double touch that we're looking at here. And now we get to the point, this blind guy who now has received his sight, and he's been sent back to his house. Go to your house, that's where I am. Don't go back to that place that is going to try to get you to live outside yourself in terms of stressing the external, religious rules and everything else. Because I'll be in here. And at this point, Jesus sits them down and says, "So who do men say I am?" And they've got a variety of answers, because that's what's been said now for chapters. Everybody thinks something different. But the bottom line is, but who do you say I am? And we know the story. Peter speaks up and comes out with this tremendous confession, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." And in going deeper and gaining greater spiritual insight of who Jesus is, do you remember what Jesus says in return? "And you are Peter." In other words, in his eyes being opened to greater and greater awareness, spiritual awakening, his eyes are being opened to himself in greater and greater awakening. The revelation of Jesus, if it's true that our lives are hidden in Christ, a greater revelation of Christ brings a greater revelation of us, because that's where our lives are hidden. And that's where he's trying to lead them, into him, into themselves. How is it you don't understand? Simple. We haven't recovered our sight yet, but we believe that if we walk with you, by the time this story is over, we'll see you as you truly are. Behold, what manner of love is this the Father has bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Now you are the children of God, but it has not yet been revealed what you shall be. But we know this, that when he appears, we shall see him as he is, and we shall be like him. He goes back to his house, and that's the way that story ends. Jesus says, "Who do you say I am?" And the beauty of the story, you'd say, so Peter arrived. No, Peter denied him later. Peter refused to let him wash his feet later. Peter said, "I would die for you," because it's ongoing. The spiritual awakening, the spiritual consciousness, it's ongoing all the time. So we walk with him, and we talk with him, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. Yes, we're old. Deal with it. You're young. We're dealing with you. I'm going to say that one more time.
When he spit on his eyes, he only got a little bit. When he laid his hands on him, he got the whole 9 yards. What's with the spit?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to just speak off the top of my head. I mean, I've got some thoughts. Jesus has done the spitting thing 3 times now.
Well, he made the clay the one time, but this
He
is the
spit
first
into the
time
clay.
he actually...
No, actually, it's the second time.
Oh, is it? Okay.
A few chapters earlier, he spit on a guy's tongue.
Oh!
Yeah, it's when he stuck his fingers in his ears.
He gave him a
Yeah. Gave him a wet willy. There's a spiritual significance, I would say this, that out of your innermost being rivers of living waters shall flow. So for Jesus, what we look at as spit, what's coming out of him, is not just spit. It's living waters that are coming out. And initially, when we're coming into the kingdom, we're first being awakened. It is by the washing of the Holy Spirit. That's the initial act of sanctification, baptism, if you would. You know, there's different likenings to water. And then after that, the actual touch is something else. It's not a matter of the water. Or like in John 9, we said it was the same way that he would have formed man out of the dust of the ground. He works with the ground. But I'd hesitate to say too much about it, because I'd rather get my thoughts straight. But that's kind of my thinking cycle. It's time to go home.
It is?
No.